It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Hey, I wanted to bring Wes McArtor back on because I've been having some phone calls with some of the Xerox agents around the country, and I wanted to ask Wes a couple of questions, and I thought, well, hell, that'll make a great end of the day with Ray episode. But Wes, before we get started, where are we at with the volume? So our top line was over 12 billion pages. Where are we today, my friend? It's as of the end of April, I guess.
Well, the good news is that after we had a 3-month decline in page volume, April saw a tick upward. So we're at 6.7 billion.
Okay.
That's great news. Both A3 and A4 saw increases in page volume.
Okay.
So that's probably a good indicator. There's more people going back to the office. There's more people kind of re-engaging back into their normal business environment. So that's good news.
Yeah, that is good news. So we're about where we were before we took that terrible dive in March, so more aligned with where we were in February. March was kind of a blip and came back to where we were. So, okay. Well, we got a long way to go to get to 100%. None of us believe that that's going to happen, so we have to be disciplined. But, Wes, here's the question. I've been talking to some of the Xerox agents, and in the past, these Xerox agents would do, service calls for Xerox, and they would, there was a warranty part issues. They'd go out and put a part in. They would bill Xerox for that. Xerox was taking care of the supplies. So these agents really didn't have to fundamentally be concerned about parts and supplies. When they used them, they were being compensated. It wasn't a big deal. But as they move into the dealer world, well, it's the opposite. They have to buy a toner, and they have to manage that toner absolutely perfectly, and they have to manage their parts and their labor and all that kind of stuff. And so I get scared a little bit when I talk to some of these folks because they're not quite ready to be doing that, and I'm afraid they're going to have some disasters. So what I'd like you to share with them, is what are some of the things they can do, and maybe they're not ready to engage with NextEra, but I always tell them, first thing you got to do is get on eAutomate and get an ERP system in there. But let's say they get their ERP system. What are some of the things that they need to be careful of when they start setting up their ERP until we can get them to engage with NextEra in a more robust fashion?
Well, ECI and eAutomate are phenomenally flexible platforms, but with flexibility comes opportunity to set it up incorrectly or to use it incorrectly. So as we've been doing more and more of these forensic audits, we've found situations where inadvertently the way they set the system up created opportunities for them to lose money.
Okay.
Right? So the complications in how you set up contracts or multiple contracts for a single customer, inventory is a big deal. So as they start actually receiving and using this inventory and it comes out on their general ledger, if they don't set that particular part up correctly and they set it up as a supply or they don't set it up as a part, it doesn't matter what model they want to use to compare themselves to. Almost everything that we're finding in the way they use their ERP doesn't show up in the model necessarily, because if they're not billing a contract correctly, they could lose $10,000 a year in revenue, but that's not going to show up in the model.
Okay.
They could theoretically be right on the model. So the goal with this is really to help these companies set up eAutomate in a way that they're going to get the best benefit of the data that comes out.
Okay. Well, the other thing is, we talk a lot about first call effectiveness and are you fixing it right the first time and all of that. So it's really important that when they do the calls and they put those calls into eAutomate that they tag the call the right way. And I know you have. I don't think there's a standard out there other than your standard. There is the standard that people should be using as far as I'm concerned. But, if let's just say that a Xerox agent does decide, hey, you know what, I'm going to get on eAutomate. What's the best place for them to get the standard call types? Is that something you give away for free to them, just the call types, so they can put that in the system? Or, how would we do that?
Absolutely. We have a standard definition of call types that we use. Sometimes dealers use call types as what we call a problem code. So they're trying to describe why the customer calls in a call type, which is not necessarily appropriate. But there's a lot of things that we can provide for them from a standardization standpoint or a procedure standpoint. So this is how you should set this up. And if they start out on the right foot, then there's a lot less garbage going to get into the system.
Okay. Well, it's just important, and I keep talking to these guys and gals, and I'm thinking, God, we want to make sure they do it the right way. Data is very important, but if, crap in, crap out, and, the worst thing you could do is get people all excited to pay attention to their data, then they find out their data sucks. Or they've been using, misguided data. And I know that NextEra doesn't have misguided data. Wes, you've worked with a few of these Xerox agents and some of the smaller dealers in general. What do you see in some of the problems that you're seeing out there? I mean, that we really need to say, stop.
Most of it is that if they send someone to training, that person has to digest and remember all of those complexities. and they don't have necessarily a resource to go to that says, hey, I have a question, why do I do this, or how should I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And so it ends up becoming a systemic problem because they think they're doing it right, but they're not. And so months down the road, oh, now we see their, Nexera is a resource to help them with that. So it's a matter of getting this system set up properly so they can trust the data that comes out.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have been working with eAutomate for how many decades now?
Oh yeah, since eAutomate was born.
Since before eAutomate, if you will. So all the different ERP systems. So that's fantastic. Wes, hey, I appreciate your time. I just, I wanted to get the update on the volume. So the good news, volumes are coming back a little bit. But here, let me ask you this question. How about the A4, A3 placements in the marketplace? Where are we at with that through April?
Well, it's interesting, the A3, the A4 population that, really crested the A3s back prior to the pandemic and stayed that way. They've slowed down a little bit. I think that's partially because more people are kind of going back into the office. There was some pent-up demand in order for A3, so the A3 population has started to come back up a little bit as a placement trend. But still, A4s are outplacing A3s.
Yeah. And I always say there's probably going to be a little spike. People are going to get all excited, but that's just a process that's going through the process as more and more people start looking at changing some of their business processes. But Wes, it's great talking to you. So I'll look forward. We're going to have a conversation more offline regarding the Xerox Agents. So I look forward to talking to you about that. But my friends, you got to pay attention to the data, and you got to make sure that your data is clean. Because we all know this, status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and we'll see you all tomorrow.